Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, and whatever time it may be. I am your humble host, Mr. David Null, also known as High Two Feathers, and I greet you with the love and the honor of the infinite creator. And I continue to pray that each and every day, that each and every one of you will continue to learn how to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings out there in the universe. And so, uh, my face is itching because of my medicines. And I greet you all, and I hope you're doing well. And the subject for this evening, time. Um, this thing's been rolling around in my head now for a while. The last few days, just incessantly, you know. Oh, it's time to talk about time. Oh, really? Yeah. It's always time to talk. What is time? And what does it mean? And to whom does it mean? It's like your boss says be on time. And if you're late and you're not on time, you get docked. You know, time is deducted. Your pay is deducted because of a time loss. I was always late. I was always late. Folks said, Dave, you're going to be late for your own funeral. Well, I've missed that funeral a couple of times in my lifetime. So it's like maybe me my being late to my own funeral, there may be something to that. Okay. But in thinking about time, and I look over at the time on my clock, and because over the last few years I have refused to jump ahead with my clocks or bring them, I don't change my clock. So right now I'm an hour behind. I'm on Central Standard Time with my time. And so what does that mean? Well, nothing to me because it's the same time in my house time. But to somebody else, well, but you're an hour behind time. Hey, Barry, how are you? Oh, I could have used a dash of sugar in that coffee, but that's all right. It'll work. And so I was thinking of, it's about time to talk about this, and do other people get confused with time and time travel? And is time travel even, well, what does time travel mean? I mean, well, the time it means to you and the time it means to me. So right now, my clock is on Central Time. So Barry's time and mine are the same if we looked at our clocks, right? I think so. Yeah, right. That'd be right. Right. Because I don't set my clocks ahead. So, but what does that mean? So he and I are on the same time. We're on the same frequency. And okay, but because I didn't set my clocks ahead, I'm behind the times with everybody else on the East Coast. So, this idea of time and its concept, and what does it mean to me or you individually? Well, and the discussion for this is that the time we have wasted. Yeah, you know what I had to do? And say I had to go outside and waste time getting Duggar back. I could hear him barking off in the distance, and he'd been outside for a while, and he should have been like by the door around the house. So I had to go outside and start the truck, and that brought him home. He's like, whoa, 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 wherever he is, me calling him or whatever, if I start the truck, he's home within a couple of minutes. And sure enough, I didn't see him, but he was like wagging his tail behind the truck, like he wouldn't come up to the door that I had open because I think he was afraid. But anyway, but yeah, Duggar's back. And he has rolled in something, but I don't know what. Anyway, he's safe and at the house, but the time that he can see, everything can be related to time. So in his brain, his time is not the same as what we perceive time. He's off running and chasing stuff, and he's up at the neighbor's house running around and sniffing for stuff. And his sense of time is there is none. He's on the trail, right? So, to other animals, now for me, for example, the strange thing is that owls, for example, at certain times of the day, they're within a few minutes or an hour, within an hour of hooting, you know. And in the afternoon, about 4:30, 5 o'clock. Sometimes they're a little earlier, sometimes they're a little later, but they're always around a certain time. And you can hear the owls hooting like, hey, it's time, it's tea time. Hey, Delaney, how are you? It's tea time, everybody. And the owls will hoot up and down the river. And it's not nighttime, but the sun's going down. And so almost every day. Now I know that there are times when I'm not like paying attention, and there are times when I can hear the owls hoot with the TV on and the windows shut and like what, and I can still hear them. But also early in the morning, you can hear the owls hoot. Now also late at night, there are times when being outside and it's around 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock ish at night. And it depends on if you're on Eastern Daylight Time or not. You can hear the coyotes howl, and there's this yip, 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 yip way off in the distance. And you can tell it's not regular dogs, but it's a pack of coyotes, or sometimes it's foxes, because foxes have a higher pitch because they're smaller animals. But anyway, and you can just hear them yip, 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 and barking and way off in the distance. But at night, almost now, unless it's raining or even if it's really cold, you can still hear them. But you'll hear the now. My point of this is that they do it. Here we go, all the time, almost every night. You can hear this. They may miss a night if it's raining or something, but you can hear, the owls hooting. You can hear the coyotes yipping. You can hear other critters, rain frogs, that as it starts to get dark, they go chirping in the trees. So there is a time for all of them. Between certain hours, certain frogs will chirp, and at certain temperatures, which temperature I think can relate to time, because when the temperature is right and all the frogs sing, it's time for them to sing because the temperature is right. And that's a stretch, right? But at the same time, you see, it you're going to get tired of me saying time, right? Oh, by the way, it's time for me to share a 20 with you, even though it's a 30 something or almost 40. But anyway, it's time. So, um, people's concept of what time is it? Well, it's time to go to bed, or it's time to get up, or it's time to take your medicine, which for me, here these last couple of days, my time has been mixed up. I was early taking some meds and I was late taking some of the meds, but I took them all. I think. God, to have a short term memory. I was sitting here and I would swear to God that I had taken my meds. And an hour later, I was sitting here going, I couldn't remember, honestly, if I had taken my medicine or not. And I was like, oh no, did I take it? Now, wait a minute. I think I did, but what if I didn't? I don't know. I shouldn't take another one because that would be bad timing. Time, see where time sets in. So, any kind of travel that we make or destinations or whatever always involves time. How long is it going to take me to get there? How many hours, how many minutes, how many days, weeks, months, or whatever? How much time is it going to take me to do a thing, right? Um, if you're trying to make money at something, time is of essence, right? Because if it takes you too long to do something and you say, well, here, I'm going to sell this item for $10. Well, that's great. And $10, well, is it worth $10? Well, but I spent 6 hours on it. And you go, well, 10 hours divided by six is like a dollar something an hour, right? So you're not being very profitable. Now, me being retired, if took me 10 hours to make something and I sold it for $10, I'm retired. Even though it should be worth more because I feel my time is worth more. So what is your time worth? Well, there are some people whose time is they consider it very valuable. And so therefore it's $1,000 an hour, you know, or $1,000 a day, or $1,000 a minute on some of these folks. So the value of time is dependent, you know, on who you are and where you're from and what time meaning, well, how do I put this? It's the time of your life, right? How much education do you have? So have you had enough time to spend on education? So, and if you've had 4 years, you've invested time into your education so that you can, when you therefore, the time that you spent in a school or learning something your time now has a value, right? Plumbers, $50 an hour, or whatever, right? Or $100 an hour. An architect, 25, 30, $50 an hour. um, you know, basic labor, you know, 7 or $10 an hour, or minimum wage for your time, maybe 15 if you're lucky, right? So time is everywhere. All the time, there's time. No matter what you do, it involves time. You wake up. What time is it? Well, I woke up. I woke up for a short time because I had to pee. Or my dog woke me up and it was 2:30 in the morning. Guess what time it was, So no matter what we do, as I was considering this time thingy, that it's everything we do involves time. How long does it take you to go to the bathroom? How long does it take you to make a phone call? Well, I don't have time. What about wasted time? You know? Well, so you say, well, what do you mean time wasted on waiting for time? Well, because like for example, um I have to go to the hospital for another test tomorrow. It's at 3 p.m. That's what time it is. But in my reference, because I'm an hour behind Eastern Daylight Time, that means 2 o'clock on my clock. At 2 o'clock, it's 3 o'clock. So I have to manipulate this time to guess what? Beyond time. Because they want you there um, ahead of time, 15 minutes before time. And they want, and what, how long does it take, which is a measurement of time. Well, the time it takes is only 15 minutes. Okay. So I'm thinking time. So if I get there 15 minutes early and then I'm there for 15 minutes, do I take Duggar into town with me? And can he sit in the truck It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So the time of day it is, the sun is lower. It's not as hot. It's going to be a nice day tomorrow with the temperature only in the low 80s. Leave the windows open so I could take Duggar to town with me. Okay. So in the time that it takes to fit, you see where time is involved in all aspects of this. I mean, of me just going. But I'm I'm waiting for tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So I have to, well, I can't do anything else before that. So I'm waiting on the time it takes for me to go into town, right? So I have to leave here at a certain time to get there on time. Da 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 da. So we waste time waiting to go to the doctor, waiting to go to the appointment so you can be there on time. So the time that what are you doing waiting on the time? You see, there's two times in there. It's the time of day, but it's also the time you waste waiting to go to work. Well, I'm sitting here, I'm going to have another cup of coffee. I woke up early and time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping. Uh, hey, Pod Joe, how you doing? Um, I'm not sure I remember seeing you in the chat, but welcome. Time's up. There's more time tomorrow if we hurry. Yeah, exactly. But as I was like going through this, I was thinking about God, they set these appointments up for me, right? And I'm just regretfully have been late all my life. Okay. And so I don't want to be late for these appointments and I've, knock on wood, I have been on time. I've even been early, which is very unusual for me. But one could say it's about time, Dave. You know, so for me, every time I think about this, see, there's time. There, the whole conversation is littered with the word time. And I'm not trying to like make it up. It's like, oh my God, time. It is time. Is it time to, how long did it take me? How long, which is a time factor, did it take me to come up with some of this crud? And how long did it take? Again, a time factor. So no matter what we do every day, time is involved, whether we like it or not. Well, I'm not going to forget about what time it is. But see, in forgetting about what time it is, you have just established a time thing. I'm not going to think about time. I'm going to think about, but while you're not thinking of time, the clock's still ticking, you know, tick tock, tock, you know. And then there are the people who are on TikTok, which could kind of sort of initiate time. When you think of TikTok, I don't use it, not associated, but it's there, right? So TikTok. So the clock's ticking all the time. So people are on TikTok a lot of times wasting, guess what, time on TikTok, which is the clock ticking. So the TikTok is wasting time that, I'm just saying the how things are all tied together, whether you like it or not. It's still tied together, and time is always a factor, it seems. It's always in there. Well, I don't have time to listen to this, and I don't see where Hawkeye has the time to do a 4 hour program. I don't understand, you know. So the conversation of time takes time. And we're going to take time out of our busy schedule. Oh, okay, but your schedule's still busy, but you're going to take time out of it? How are you going to do that? Because you're still going to be involved in time. So we understand what it means. I'm going to take time out of my busy schedule. No, you're not. You're going to ignore time or something, but you're not going to take the time anywhere with you, right? You're going to exchange the time. Well, I'm not, I've been working my butt off, so I'm going to take time instead of working to go have fun. I'm going to go lounge by the river. I'm going to dangle my feet in piranha waters. I'm going to, go have my hair done. I'm going to take the time to do something else. Time. Then there are people who are just like um oblivious to time. They just whatever don't care. Well, but time's still ticking, right? But it doesn't bother them. And now I go through periods of that. Is it daylight outside or is it getting dark? So I don't necessarily need to know what time it is on the clock. But what time of day is it? Is it bright outside? Is the sun straight overhead? Or is it coming up in the trees or is it going down in the trees, right? So the time of day it is. Um, Heat is related to what time it is. So you say, wait a minute, well, hang on. Well, if it's the middle of the day, it's going to be hotter, right? So you can say, well, it's hot outside. Well, and so you can assume because of the daytime, time is involved because it's hot outside. You want to go out before it gets hot, which is a time, okay? Or you're going to wait until the sun starts going down because it's cooler outside. It's a better time. You see? So time is stuck to everything. I was like, what isn't time stuck to? I mean, the clock's always ticking, so there's time. It's time to share a bowl, you know. Then there's a phrase that I was thinking of earlier. I was thinking about meditating and prayer and so forth. And that it was like, well, anytime's a good time to meditate, and anytime's a good time to have prayer. But what is a good time? What is a good time to do this? Well, any time. There's the word again. So it's anytime's a good time to send a prayer to somebody. Anytime's a good time to smile. Anytime's a good time to have positive thoughts to the universe or to someone or to people or to, whatever, right? So, how does our brain conceive these different phases of time? Well, quite frankly, sometimes it takes a little time to cogitate on the time it takes to do something. Like, I've been for the last year, I'm going to be 70. Well, now that I am, it's time, right? I have become 70 years old and it's time to realize certain things. It's a time of my life. It's the 7 times 10, it's that 7 year thingy. And it's time to start for 70. It's time to start a new series of sevens if that's where my head is at. And since I've had that conversation, it's been interesting that the conversation of seven has showed up in several things that I've looked at, read, watched, heard, listened to. It was just been weird about the magic number seven and how it's just related to all different kinds of things and to different people at, here we go, at different times. So, we have our past the autumnal equinox, right? The fall equinox, when day and night time is equal. Now, the days are going to be getting shorter and the nights will be longer, right? Until December. So it's time for our bodies to adjust. The planet is adjusting because it's that time of year. The season is fall. It's the time, and oh my God, the amount of leaves that have been falling here the last few days. Now, we've had some decent winds. I say high up versus closer to the ground, hardly a cloud in the sky, but it's been rustling the trees and leaves are just falling everywhere. And I mean, this is barely October. It's just strange that I've got all these dead oak leaves already out here underneath the tree. So it's going to be time to rake the leaves. It's going to be time, you know. So as the time is changing, our bodies are changing to the time. Our eyes are going to be getting adjusted instead of staying out till 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and it's still being light outside. The time is changing, so it's darker outside. Our bodies will be adjusting to the new time. So every day that passes by, our bodies are adjusting to the time, whether we're paying attention to it or not. It is, right? Because it's getting darker sooner. So our bodies are adjusting. Our eyes are adjusting. We get readjusted to the time. Hey, Tracy. So time, whether we like it or not, ain't holding still for none of us. You know what I mean? Because it involves everything. Whether I like it or not, the dog figures it's time to bark at something outside. I don't choose it, he does. The cat's outside. They're hungry, they scratch on the window, they think it's time for dinner. So there are all these other times, regardless of what I'm doing, that are intersecting and kind of sort of interjecting their times with mine, like Duggar. He'll bark and wag his tail, and it's time to go outside, right? Or whatever. So I'm I'm biding my time, waiting tonight to do the stories, waiting to do tonight's show, and it all involves time. Am I wasting time getting ready for the show? Well, in a way I am, because I'm using the time. I'm like, well, I got 15 minutes. So it's too early to check in with Robert. So I take the time to check the weather and I take the time to watch this short video. And then I tune in with Robert to make sure that I'm on time. I can't you can't get away from it. And if you're watching a movie, well, how long is the movie? Well, how long is a fraction of time, right? Well, do I have time to watch the whole thing? Or time is in it all. So, but what does that mean? I just find it humorous, is what it is. So, for everything that I look at, it's like, ooh, there's time again. So, gives me great joy to laugh through the day at the different um, magnitudes maybe of time. For example, I'm watching the ants, and the cats have caught this little critter, this little subterranean critter like a mole or whatever, and it's out there and it's dead. Well, the cats didn't eat it, so but the ants have found it. So I'm thinking, I wonder how long it took the ants to find this dead little mole. There's time. How long did it take? How long does it take for the ants to like dismantle this little critter and take it to the hole in the ground? You know, and how about so our brains, I think, a lot of us, I wonder how long it took the ants to get there. Me being crazy like that. And I was like, well, but the ant hill is way over there. So they got to travel across the yard. Now there's Now there's only one or two that have found this ant. And a few minutes later in time, you see time, now there are hundreds of ants on this critter, tearing it apart piece by piece. And within an hour or so, this thing is just swarmed with ants. It's like the whole hive has come to find this critter and are munching on it, nonstop. Daytime or nighttime, they're munching on this thing, right? So, how much time does it take? Now, I know this is just one little thing here, blah, blah, blah. And, what does it matter? But, in just observing something, there's time involved. How long did it take you to focus on something over there? How long did you watch what was going on? Did you watch the sunset? Well, how long did you sit there? What time of day was it? I mean, so time is with us when we're sleeping, because when you wake up, you want to know how long, how much time did I spend sleeping? How many hours? How many minutes? Oh, I took a nap for 30 minutes, you know, I took a power nap, 10 minutes, so there's time in it all, in our sleep, in our wake, in our conscious mind, and in our subconscious mind. Now, I've talked about this before, and I think it's a good time to kind of bring it up as part of the time thing, in that folks have been wanting to learn how to astral project. And one of the things that I was talking about and have talked about for many times in many of my videos about how telling time in your head, picturing a clock and being able to tell time without looking at a watch, without tuning in the radio, without, what time is it? And you close your eyes for a second and picture the clock that you're using and to tell time. And, for those folks who have practiced it, and I, for myself, after all these years I learned how to do this back in the late 60s and early 70s. Now, my clock face has changed, but I always pick a clock with hands and numbers. All right. Because then I can see where the hands are, and versus trying to look at a quote digital clock. Okay. So now, other folks, you can try what you want. I tried the digital clock thing, and I found that because it's digital and the hands flip and so forth, that it was difficult for me to read the clock. But a clock with hands and numbers on it, I could easily see that for whatever reason. And it was easier for me to tell time that way through the method of just closing your eyes. And now I don't even have to close my eyes, because now I can sort of picture it out here somewhere. And it's like, oh, there's the clock and there's what time it is. All right. So it takes a little time, here we go again, to learn how to do this. But for those folks who have actually tried it and practiced it, they've had good results with it. And over time and with practice, they're within 5 or at least 10 minutes of being right on the money. And if I'm surprised if I'm not a few, if I'm not 5 minutes one way or the other, of being on time with what time is it. I've gotten way too good at it. It's just, and it's become second nature. So there are things that sometimes you do. Most folks aren't ambidextrous. In other words, they're predominantly right handed or left handed. But over the years, I've tried to use my left hand more. And, like if I'm going to do something, I would hold a can or a bottle in my left hand and open the tab with the right. Well, now, if I'm doing something, I have tried to learn to hold the can in my right hand and open the can with my left, just for practice, just to let it have a chance to be involved. And the time it takes to include being ambidextrous into your life, but it uses both sides of the brain, and it helps to commingle those. neurons that are being fired all over the place. And I, hey, Podjo, time keeps giving and taking. Could it be timeless? Absolutely. CERN has almost found the fourth dimension. I wonder if time is relevant there. It's relevant only to the fourth dimension. Does your clock have a second hand in your mind? Yeah, but I don't pay attention to it. It's I can see the second hand on my clock over here that I'm looking at on the wall, but it's really faint. But the the other two hands are bigger and easier to see. So, and because the second hand is moving, um, I try to only focus on the large hands and what their position is. The second hand just it doesn't really matter because it's continuously moving. And so, but that's interesting that you brought it up. But in my picturing of it, because also because it's moving and because it's much thinner, it's harder for me to see, to focus on. So it's always easier just to see what the big hands are. Anyway, but the interesting thing about time, I mean, there have been, here we go. See, there have been times when I have felt like time had slowed down to where, 10 minutes felt like an hour, or the opposite, 10 minutes, you know, or an hour only felt like 10 minutes. The compression of time. Now, nothing has actually physically, it doesn't seem, to have happened. But when you're waiting that last 10 minutes to get out of school or work or whatever, and it's dragging on, you just swear to God it's never going to get there. The time keeps dragging on. Folsom Prison Blues. But anyway, then I hear that lonesome whistle, warm to San Antone. I hear that train a comin', a rollin' round the bend. I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when, but there's time involved. And I'm stuck in Folsom Prison alone, and time keeps dragging on, you know. But anyway, time keeps on ticking, ticking, ticking into the future. Who was that? Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into. Anyway, now I got all these time songs running through my head. Um, but in the times that we live, and the stories that have, you know, in ancient times. Okay. And what did time feel like back 1,000 years ago? Did they have alarm clocks? Did they have time? Did people worry about the second hand? Did they worry about 5 minutes? You know, in the medieval times, were they like, well, it's 10 minutes after two and you're late, off with his head. I mean, seriously? I mean, hey, let me check my sundial, for the Greeks. Well, what time? I don't know. It's cloudy. I don't know what the hell time it is. We can't, it's cloudy today. We're just SOL. We're, we're just, slime out of luck. Um, we don't know what time it is. We were supposed to execute Barabbas, at 12:30, but the sun's not out. We don't know what time it is. We're going to have to guess what time it is, well, I'll meet you out in the street at high noon. Everybody, it didn't matter if it was 12 or 1 o'clock, but if the sun was high overhead, you knew what time it was. Interesting how time is used in different categories. And now if you're thinking, if you're a rocket scientist and you're talking about blasting something off into space, or you're talking about race car drivers or whatever, then you're looking at time versus speed versus distance. How fast can I go in the quarter mile? How fast will this engine turn over? How many RPM, which is revolutions, guess what? Per minute. Okay. So there's time involved in all kinds of things, from our engines running, whether it's electric or not, it's still going around. And as it goes around, those are revolutions, guess what? Per minute, right? So, how fast does the magneto spin? How fast can this recharge? Because it's an RPM thing, rounds per minute, right? So, no matter what we're doing, time is in there. And as I'm sitting here talking about stuff during this time, my coffee's gotten colder. So, there's a value there. Over the last 10 minutes, my coffee has dropped X amount of degrees. Well, in dropping those degrees, it's in relationship to time because it took time for my coffee to get colder. you know, there's time again, time and time again. Every time I look at something, time stuck to it somehow. And in a lot of ways, during my day when I'm quote supposedly bored with nothing to do because I have too much time on my hands. Too much time on my. That was Sticks, I think. Anyway, um, man, different songs that are trying to play in my head at the moment. But so a friend of mine and I were talking about this, and there's all this talk about nuclear war. I personally don't believe we're going to have nuclear war. I mean, I just don't see this Armageddon happening because too many movies have showed what the earth would be like after Armageddon, and it ain't worth it to anybody for that to happen. Now, that's my personal opinion, but I grew up in the 60s in Tampa with Cuba just 100 miles off the coast from us, and where the Russians were bringing missiles into Cuba. That was scary. Now, nah, I ain't worried. Oh, but the Russian subs and the Chinese subs, and they all have nuclear capabilities. Okay, but none of these people want to start it because somebody's going to finish it. And nuclear annihilation is just stupid. Now, could there be some alien influences? Maybe, but they don't want the planet to be radioactive because then they can't use it. So the idea of this nuke thing. So anyway, but it was like, but could someone do something to us like an EMP? Yes. Natural events could give us an EMP, right? The grid goes down. Well, after the hurricane and everything, there are a lot of people in Florida that ain't got lights, right? When Hurricane Michael came through here and wiped us out them 4 or 5 years ago, we were without power for a while. And the city of Meigs, there wasn't a telephone pole standing, not a light pole, nothing. And so in a lot of ways, things went back to the 1800s, back when Ma and Pa, all right, it's getting dark, we better light the candles. Let's close up the windows or whatever, let's open up the windows or whatever, depending on what time of year it was. for skeeters and letting the breeze in, or it getting too cold outside, you close your windows. But anyway, but rather than folks having air conditioners on and everything being run by electricity, some places didn't have juice for 2 weeks. Easy, right? Because there was so much damage through here. The same thing is going on down in Florida and up in Carolina and wherever there was power outages. And I honestly feel for them folks. But their time is spent differently now because they don't have electricity. What do you mean, Dave? Well, kids can't play video games because the lights are out. If the generator's on, you don't want to put too much, on your thing. Now, if you got a cell phone or whatever, okay. But to the point, though, folks they can't do what they was doing before the lights went out. So, and one of the things that when folks complained about after the lights were out around here was the fact that they were bored. They didn't have anything to do, and that boredom was becoming an issue for these folks because they're so used to playing their games and checking mail and doing all this stuff, and it just was not available for almost 2 weeks in some instances. So these, and the kids were bored to tears. Go to your room and play. Doing what? Well, because the lights were out, they had nothing to do. So this idea, though, um, what if there was a nuclear winter? But what if the lights went out? That's They go out all the time. So nuclear war? Nah. The lights going out? Yeah. And what am I worried about most? I'm worried about what bored people would do if a serious issue with the lights went out. What are they going to do? No refrigerators. The freezers are gone. A lot of folks are 100% electric. Electric. I got gas stove. I could still cook. Um, I've got ways. I've got stored water, so I didn't have to have electricity. To get water, I had to use a bucket and tote it and stuff like that. But I still had water where other people didn't. Now, but I'm still homesteading my place after 40 years. And I still have these homesteading techniques because I'm still kind of homesteading. Other folks ain't like me, and I get it. But them folks are the ones that were suffering. Alex, how are you? What are y'all talking about? Tracy, did I say hi? Oh man, I hope I did. I have to use the second hand a lot now because of the heart meds they just put me on. So I can take my pulse. Yeah, 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 Tracy. I understand that. Oh, when you're in jail, you ignore time. Oh, when I was in jail, time was all you thought about. Honest to God. Well, I got one more day to grind, and yeah, no one wins in a nuclear war. Nobody's gonna, nobody. Oh, they're gonna threaten, um, right back at you, Alex. Zender the Gunda Shaman. No, but I would, since you're here, I would like to get high again. It's 1:18 a.m. in the morning time on October the 5th, 2022. And oh my goodness, my neighbors brought me an old air conditioner I stuck in the window down here. And because I was having trouble breathing and so forth, I ran it for a month. My electric bill went up $55. It's my electric bill this month is the highest I've paid, I think, ever. I don't know if I've ever paid over $100. Maybe years ago when I read the when I ran air conditioners before, but it has been a good 7, 8, 9, 10 years since I've had an electric bill that was higher than $70. It was $106 for my electricity this month, which is like freaked me out when I saw it. And I was like, screw that air conditioner. Bye. You know, but it's my fault. I left it on all the time, all the time. And leaving it on means money and time spent, and the electricity went up anyway. Could have had a better use of time. I mean, so anyway, um, and I've you know, the time spent on talking about time has been 50 minutes and 28 seconds. How much time, right? But in thinking about time, I was thinking about other people and their relationship to time. My dear friend Marso, who's been gone now 2 years or more, she always wanted to be 15 or 20 minutes ahead of time. Her time mode was always ahead, and I was always 5 minutes behind. And there was always this struggle with time between us. And I was like, but honey, we got plenty of time. And she would go, "Oh, but well, you know, my appointment's at 2 o'clock." Right. We get there at 10 minutes till, and she's pissed because she wanted to be 15 minutes early. Well, but you're there 7 or 10 minutes early. Ain't that enough time to be on time? Oh, and I would like, listen, the doctor ain't gonna see you till 2:30 anyway. So you get there 15 minutes earlier to spend waiting on the doctor who's 30 minutes late from the appointment. So now instead of spending 30 minutes of time waiting, it's now 45. But she was like, then would complain about how much time she had to wait on the doctor. Well, you got there 20 minutes early. Quit bitching. And she was 30 minutes late. So, and now you spent an hour at the doctor. Right. Now, don't bitch at me because you're the one that set it up. But in that time, so what she did with the time that she was waiting on the doctor, which a lot of that time was wasted, because what are you going to do sitting in the doctor's office? This was before cell phones and things. Well, but then she got her cell phone. So then it's the game. And then it's the this. And it's the call. And it's the, you know. So, but during that time waiting on the time to go in to see the doctor or to have your appointment, or it's time to leave, or it's time to go, or, you know, and sometimes it's arbitrary, you know, like, well, everybody's done eating. Everybody through eating? Yeah. Okay, time to go. Well, but is there a time on the clock that says, well, then there are times that says, okay, everybody, lunchtime is over. So you have a specific time to eat. Okay. Or do whatever, right? Or it's open. You go to a restaurant and you sit around and you take all the time in the world, right? Ooh, it's 1:22. Oh, I missed it by 2. In the Caribbean, everybody late, 30 minutes to an hour. Nobody's on time. You know, you see, um, that's Indian time, you know. One of my favorite stories, excuse me, have some coffee if you got any or whatever leftovers. But so I'm at a powwow in Tennessee, in Tullahoma, and the promoter Jerry, he was very much he was in the Marines. It was a lot of everything was on time. Me, I'm like, yeah, always kind of been on Indian time before I knew what Indian time was. Well, I'll be there tomorrow. What time? I'll be there tomorrow. What time? I'll be there tomorrow. What time? I'll be there tomorrow. Okay. So anyway, he had spoken to some of these native folks, vendors, and this was Friday afternoon, and they were going to be there for Saturday, or it might have been Thursday afternoon. I'm not sure, but anyway, it was the day before the big event. And so he's waiting on folks to come in to show them where they're supposed to go, and in this big circle around the sacred circle. So how he had all the vendor tents lined up and around, right? So he's trying to get everybody positioned, right? And so he's talking about these folks that we know that are supposed to be in. So Jerry's like, well, it's like 2:30 in the afternoon. And he goes, well, and I'm making up these names, Pete and Sally will be here anytime now. Well, it's 2:30 in the afternoon, and now it's 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And because of the time of year in November, it's really the sun's going down, and especially Central Time. It's almost dark, and he's worried about Pete and Sally, or whoever I said. They ain't showed up yet. So he goes, they should be here anytime, right? So 2 hours later, it's 7 o'clock in the evening, and we've got lights up, and everybody's sitting around and um, you know, engaged in getting ready for tomorrow kind of thing, and Pete Sally ain't showed up yet. Well, lying about 10 o'clock, Jerry's on the cell phone. He's been trying to reach these people. He's pacing up and down. He's asking people, have you heard from Pete and Sally? Has anybody called? I mean, he's going around to all these 30 different vendors, and he's asking and talking. And about quarter to 12, Pete and Sally show up with all their gear and everything, and they come in and they're waving, and Jerry is literally livid. He is so mad that they're not there on time. And Pete and Sally look at each other and they said, what time is it, Jerry? And he said, it's like 15 to 12, and they said, well, it's still Friday, ain't it? And he goes, well, yeah. And they looked at each other and said, we're on time. We're here. We made it on Friday. We're here. What you worrying about? Well, I thought you were going to be here earlier this afternoon, and I thought the time, and so their definition of what time they were going to be there, and it's happened with other folks too. And poor Jerry he's just a time oriented person growing up, and being in the Marines, and you got to be on time for this, and you got time for this, and everything's, but if it says, if it says 1,600 hours, they mean 1,600 hours. They don't mean a minute after. They don't mean 2 hours later. So time, which is another thing. So then there's military time. Ooh, it's the same time. It's just called something else, but it's 1,600 hours, which is 6 o'clock at night, I think, or four. Anyway, I can't keep up. It'd be 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So, but the idea though, so that there's military time, okay, and then there's regular time. Well, there's no difference except how you say it, right? So I have the word universe tattooed on my throat because my love, wow, is endless. Oh, that's interesting. I've seen people set their clocks 50. Oh, honey, I set my clocks at least 10 minutes early for years. I don't want my time to be up. Yeah, I have recently been through that. And several of my friends, seems that we've had some ND experiences, and if it isn't near death, it's close to death. It's like these old age realizations that you just didn't get because you were 30 or 40 or 50 or even 60 years old. And now that I'm 70 and other people are, close to my age, they're having these revelations, and time has gotten to them, and now they're thinking about things in totally different perspectives and so forth, because of the time in their lives and their age, which is time, right? So no matter how everything I looked around, I'm like, son of a bitch, I can't get rid of the time. It's attached to everything, you know, um, which is okay. It's just having not meditated on the word time, or maybe some of its inflections or depth perceptions or whatever. Because one of the things that has been interesting to me is, in my old age, for whatever reason, I'm having way too much sleep time. I spend way too much time sleeping. I do not like it at all. But apparently there's something about, here's time, that is spent in the sleep mode, because the dreams and things and stuff that's going on sometimes just doesn't make sense. But as much as I don't want to be asleep and there are things I want to do in the day, um, it seems like that time, for whatever reason, is being, I gotta say, against my best wishes. I would like to have spent more time outside today. Um, but my sleep time got intervened or whatever, and it seems like I wasted that time sleeping today. During the daytime when it was beautiful outside and there are things I wanted to do and I didn't get them done. So it feels like that time for me has been wasted in the dream state. But then I have to reevaluate that time, quote, that was wasted, and wonder what went on in the dream time. Because for some reason, as much as I wanted to stay awake, I was, you, you're going to sleep. But I just flippin' woke up. Sorry, you got to go back under. So now, from my spirit guide folks and from my shaman training, my curiosity is, all right, y'all, why are you having me spend so much time in the dream time? What's in there that I'm supposed to be learning, knowing, or something? And part of me understands that in that dream time, there's also healing going on. So, or it can go on. Um, and so I'm like, so am I in some kind of healing mode? Then how come I still ache and my body hurts from sleeping too much? And my head is groggy because I have slept too long. Um, and, um, here, let me make some coffee because I really want to wake up here and stay awake for longer than 30 minutes or something before I go sleep for another 2 hours. Um, and I'm not locked in some dark room because I'm here in the living room with all this light and sunshine and everything. So it's not like I'm hibernating but my time is still spent in the dream time. So my shaman side of me has been wondering what what's going on during that time. See, I can't get away from the dang word, you know? And I'm not trying to emphasize it. It just keeps coming up in the dead gum conversation. Every time I talk about it, time comes every time. See, anyway. So different folks how they're raised, what their perceptions of life is, what their perceptions of time is, what their perception of reality is, will affect um, what time means to them. Is an hour just an hour? Does an hour seem longer than an hour? Does is time slipping by? With my older folks that I talk to, it's like, quote, where did the time go? Like we could actually hold on to it. Well, because time is constantly changing, how can you hold on to something that doesn't stand still? You know, so you wish that time would just hold still for a minute. It can't. It can't hold still for a second. Now, I know there are things that are going on with CERN and that great big old giant wheel under the ground and what them crazy folks are trying to do. And they're screwing with stuff. Let's be honest about that, okay? Oh, by the way, I got hit. I got a video of mine that was flagged and taken out because some kind of content, and it was something it was about history, the crazy things of history to this day or something like that. It had to do with history, and I'm sure I was making up stuff or being belligerent or whatever, but they flagged my and took the video down because whatever I said in that video did not conform with YouTube rules and regulations. And I'm like, are you serious? Whatever it was I said about crazy times in history or something was the title of the video that they took down and flagged me. And this is your first strike, and we're not going to bother you too bad. And I'm like, how long ago did I do that damn thing? And what the hell did I talk about? Anyway, they didn't like it and took it down. So I was probably telling the truth about some things about stuff that happened in the 60s, and telling the truth about this and that, and probably talking about stuff that happened during that 911 thingy and all that. Probably didn't like that. So, but anyway, when you tell the truth, but I thought to myself, with 500 and some odd subscribers, and I love you all and thank you, that they would flag me for something I said in one of my ramblings of a video. Whoa. So we're all being censored. I mean, even little old me. I'm like, seriously, guys? Seriously, guys? I get 100 views. Maybe that's like really big, 20 or 30 views. It's not about the numbers to me, but you look at them and see where they are and go, ooh, there 10 people watch this one, 30 people watch this one, 100 people watch this one. Interesting. So, but for some reason, somebody didn't like the one I talked about crazy stuff in history or something. Anyway, so I thought to myself, ain't it about time that I got, you know, um, as long a time as I've spent on YouTube and of all the crazy stuff I've talked about, I figure little old channel who's looking at my stuff. Apparently, YouTube is, and one of my videos got slammed. Hmm. Okie doke. Question: was it about time that they picked on me too? There goes time again. Um, so for those of us with too much time on our hands, as I'm looking at my next 7 years in the future, right? What do I want to do with my time? Do I just want to sit back and watch old movies and throw my feet up and me and the dog go on walks and once in a while we go to the river? Or, or do I want to, you know, do something, you know, constructive in some way? Do I want to start a hobby? Do I want to pick up a hobby that I have, um, like, I been thinking about, I would love to do puppets again, but I still come up with the same issue. I don't have the space, so if I want to do puppets again, then I need to deal with that. So in order to do that, then I need to start a project because it will take time for me to rebuild my shed, which would give me the room I need to do the puppets, you see. So having had, you know, my heart attack and having had my time rattled, my time cage rattled, well, what do I really want to do? Well, I don't know. Do I just want to sit here and look out the window? Well, if I'm expected to live another 7 years, that seems like it's going to get mighty boring. And I watched enough old movies and stuff, I would really like to do something else, and to resurrect my puppetry. I would love it at this stage and age and so forth, um, and to try to give something back with that and teach it on, make it kid worthy, Um, so how do I want to spend my time? How do I want to plan my time? So, or do I just want to go, yeah, forget about it? It doesn't matter about what the time has been at. And maybe tomorrow, which is a value of time, if tomorrow ever comes, that tomorrow I might reconsider what I want to do with my time. And so we are always, especially when we're busy, we're always reevaluating our time, sometimes on a minute to by minute basis. You've got a deadline and you're typing something out, or you got to trying to get a report out, or something, and you're pressed for time. And people, well, the time out. Okay. Um, Why? So they can spend time to reevaluate their time. In a football game, why do they do a timeout? They're not actually taking a timeout, they're taking time to reevaluate a situation. So the idea that it's time out, well, because they're using the time, both teams are reevaluating. You see, so time isn't everything. So, but during the day, even for me, I don't have any specific things. Well, tomorrow I got to be at the hospital at 3 o'clock for me, their time. So I want to make sure that I get to bed on time, that I have enough sleep so I wake up so I can be on time. So so I'm actually starting on time for tomorrow now in my brain, because I want to be ready for the time to get the truck started. Am I going to take Duggar? What am I going to do while I'm in town so that I don't waste any time, or gas going back into town, so I can stop by the grocery store, and since my checks are in and it's time that I got money in the bank, and time to buy groceries, time to get more, pet food. So, and how much time is it going to take for me to do these things? I mean, it's all involved. But for me, time is lucid other than going to the hospital and being on time. Before that, as long as I get there on time, it's up to me and it's fluid, because what I do from minute to minute or second to second is up to me and my choice. Afterwards, same thing. Well, I want to make sure that I go by the store, um, before it closes, but it's going to be in the afternoon. So guess what? I have plenty of time. But if I take Duggar, I don't want him to be in the front seat for long because of the time spent in the hot truck. You know, so time is meshed in with all of it. Okay. Is that a bad thing? Nah. But I think too many people worry about time in and of itself, being on time. How much time does it take to do this? Well, if you're trying to make money, then time is money. You know, if it takes you 2 hours to do something and you sell an item for $5, your hourly is $2.50, not counting what it would cost you for materials or whatever you're doing. But so in that you might say, well, my time is futile. you know it's futile to spend that much time on something and only make $2.50. you know that's why people is like, it was cheaper to stay home than it was to try to find a job at $6 an hour, or whatever. So you know or that even $10 an hour doesn't pay enough in time for the time it takes you to get there, and the gas, and um, sometimes it's cheaper to stay home, which is unfortunate, because you still don't have any money, but your time is spent what, you know. So, but anyway, um, I've talked enough about this particular subject, and I've taken up enough of your time. It's just amazing how all of it is tied in somehow to time. Everything that we do, our breathing, if you stop and measure our pulse, as was it Tracy? Anyway, who was talking about doing their pulse. I understand because with my heart condition, how's my pulse doing? And you count it by the second hand, how many beats per minute. Um, so even our heart rhythms and our body rhythms are situated into a time frame. How many beats per minute for the heart, or how many breaths do you take in a minute, or how, I mean, so even bodily functions, um, when the visiting nurses were here, you know, uh, did you poo today, Mr. Null? Have you, urinated today, Mr. Null? Oh, how many times would you like for me to tell you I urinated today, and how many times I wet on myself, and you know, oh yes, I did poo, at least once a day. So and they want to know if you're regular when you poo, I mean, so there's time in that, and your bodily functions, and how does it relate to what they're monitoring. So, and it all at some point relates to a time. Have you been taking your medicine on time? You know, have you been, blah, 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 once a day or twice a day or whatever it is? How long does it between times? I mean, so at whatever it is, time is involved. It just is. And I just find it fascinating. Does Duggar know what time it is? He'll be patiently waiting, that's for sure, if I leave him behind or leave him in the truck. And does he know when I say I'll be back in a few minutes? I've been practicing with him, and on the way home, when we reach a certain place, I go, "We're almost home." And he'll perk his head up. And during the 10 minutes home, he don't care, he lays down on the seat. He doesn't look out the window. He could care less. But when I say we're almost home, and he'll perk his head up and look around, and he'll notice out the window that we're at a particular place, and then he'll sit up for the next mile and a half until we get home. So, but And the rest of the time, he doesn't care until I say, we're almost home. And then he perks up. So he knows what time it is when I tell him almost home. It's time for him to sit up and look around and go, "Oh yeah, we're almost home." And he's like, "Well, I can get out, and if I got to pee, that means I can, I can get some water, or whatever it is." See, so he knows what time it is when I tell him where we are. So a specific point, quote, in time, and he knows within a few minutes he'll be out of the truck. So it's been interesting. And I do it every time we drive off on the way home. I'll say, we're almost home, and I won't tell him anywhere else, so he doesn't get confused. But there's a stop sign at about 11 miles out from town, and it's about a mile and a half to the house from there. So, but then at that intersection, I'll tell him we're almost home, and okay, he knows it's time. See, does he know what it means on the clock? No. But he knows in his little bit of time that he's not going to lay back down on the seat. He's going to sit up and watch what's going on around him. And I'll say, "See, we're almost home. We've got one more hill to go." And he'll look out the window and he'll be attentive during that time. It's only a couple of minutes, right? But I've wondered in my head watching him, what what is his vision of time? Does he obviously recognizes certain things out the window because he's attentive, you know? Um, and then when we come down the hill and make the turn, he's attentive because he realizes when we make that turn and we're go up the hill, we're in his neighborhood now because he's walked it, he's run it, he's been in. So, but does he know what time it is? In his little doggy sense, he knows it's time to be out of the truck. And whatever this short time is, he's going to be there. Hey, Miss Pearl, I know animals that actually can tell time. Yep. There's been studies done with critters, and they will have a clock at the house, and it's been cats and dogs and birds. It's been all kinds of different critters. But when the owner of the dog is leaving from work, the animal at home responds. They know that Joe's on his way home from work, and they'll wag their tail before the car gets 2 blocks from the house. The dogs will know that the owner's coming home. How do they know what time it is? And they've done several studies with this with different animals, and the synchronicity of how the animals know without looking at a clock what time it is, as far as their owners coming home or something like that, or the postman coming, or there's just, like I was saying, an hour ago about owls on the river. You can hear them at certain times of the day, and it'll be around 4 o'clock ish in there. Some it has been as early as 3 o'clock. There'll be an early bird, but most of the time it's 3:34, 4:30 ish in that time of day. And it doesn't matter what time of year it is. It's always about the same time. If I look at the clock, it has nothing to do with daylight savings time or anything like that. But and the same thing with what I was talking about, the coyotes late at night. You can hear them yipping almost within 30 minutes, a plus or minus. And how did they know? How do they know what time it is, right? And birds flying north. I mean, it's interesting that the geese have been flying around here looking for a place to roost. And it's like, why are you guys not flying north? Do they not know, quote, what time it is? But the geese have been very active around here recently. And those of us who it seems like fall's going to come early, and the temperature has dropped remarkably here in the last couple of weeks compared to what it was. And the leaves falling off the trees at a remarkable rate at this time of year, is just kind of like, well, is fall really early? Well, with the geese flying and all these, so is it time for winter? Is the time for winter going to be earlier this year? Well, all the signs kind of point to that in time. You know what I mean? It's strange. But I definitely, there are certain critters that, certain birds that will only warble, chirp. They don't really chirp, they warble. But anyway, like cock of the woods, and that sounds like a whippoorwill. But there are only certain times of the morning and only certain times of the evening will you hear these birds. And it's like, I thought it was crazy until I was sitting around with some Audubon folks who were like, just listen. And having discussed it, and they were like, these birds will only chirp, or there are certain owls that will make certain noises, but only at certain times of the day or night or whatever, or in the evening. It's amazing, that, like, tree frogs and certain frogs will only chirp and make their little noises at certain times of the day or night. And they're like literally like clockwork, having to do with time. So everything on this planet, whether we want to believe it or not, is all tied in to the planet's clock, its time, its rotation, where it is. Like we're going into the fall of the year, so the days are getting shorter. So we have to adjust our time to the planet. Well, now, to bring this up, time on our planet is time on this planet. So to try to extrapolate time to space travel is not the same. How long does it take in space? It's only relative to the planet Earth. It would be relative to Jupiter. What time is it on Jupiter? What time is it on Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, or Mercury? You know, um, because time is relative to that place because of rotation and conditions. So our time on this planet only is relative to this planet. Trying to take time into the universe is a whole nother ballywick, because our time is only relative to here. So the time it takes for a spaceship to, come out of the wormhole near the sun and travel to the earth in their time span could only be a few seconds, could be an hour. We look at these things and relate it to our clocks and our time. But our clocks and our time doesn't relate to anything else in the universe. It's only relative to us. We can extrapolate it, but our 24 hours doesn't mean anything on Jupiter, because 24 hours to them is different, right? So, this idea of how we time travel would be different from our perspective, because we would look at it from our point of view on planet Earth. So, a good example, it'd be Stardate. When you're talking about Star Trek, what is the star date? So that's a reference where other folks in the galaxy. So it doesn't matter what time it is on Earth. What is the star date? Now, in future events, well, folks who are dealing with intergalactic, or at least other spacecraft and other folks, deal with a different time than what it is on Earth. We can take a star date and convert it, and vice versa. Well, star date, well, that would mean 10 o'clock on Earth, or whatever, you know. So, but, this idea that, universal time is still only related to the Earth. Because universally, it ain't the same anywhere else except here on Earth. So, we have an 18-year dog knows when 3 p.m. food time is. My heart dictates my time awake now. I understand, Tracy. Times run out, but it does not. But does time mean any time when we die and in the spirit world? My time that I spent in the spirit world, it is not relative to this time. I can relate it to this time because how much time has elapsed. But in the dream time or the sleep time or whatever, time doesn't exist. Because you can have a dream that might take 5 minutes and it seems like you've been there for 8 years. And then there are times when it seems like it's been 8 years when it's only been a couple of minutes. So the perception of that time and how our brain perceives it, but it's only relative to this earth. And that's one thing that I think, time is the same on Pluto. No, it took so many years to get to Pluto, only in our time, and how we 1 year is one zip around the solar system for the Earth, and so, but a year to you know Mars takes longer. Venus is shorter because it's closer to the sun. So time is not relative. None of us are at the same time ever. You know what I mean? So there are folks who would like to make time their own time and conceive it in their own mind. Light years, yeah. But you see, Tracy, and I have complained about this over the years, but I was just doing a study on time and light years and things and so forth, and E equals MC squared. E is energy, equals mass times the constant squared. Well, the constant is time. So it's a simple equation. So the amount of energy it takes to move a 2 pound ball through the air, and at what distance, right? So E equals MC squared. Okay. So, but here's the thing. When I found out about how they tested the speed of light, something came up and it became the observer effect. So these scientists set up the experiment exactly like these guys. So I'm just going to make this up, but Harvard did it, and who's the other one? Yale did it. All right. They set the same machines. They set all the settings the exact same way, but Harvard gets a different value than Yale does. What? So here's the thing. The speed of light is an average. They had a bunch of scientists in different places do the same test, but they all got slightly different um, times, actually. Well, this was faster, this was shorter, this was this. So when I found out that all this time, what they use in the equation as a constant isn't a constant at all, it's an average. So this E equals mc squared, which is supposed to be the granddaddy for figuring everything out, is based on an average for the speed of light. Because from the observer point of view, they could not get an exact measurement every time that they tried the experiment. And they considered that the observer effect. So the people watching the experiment had an effect on the experiment. So no matter how you group A and group B did exactly the same things, different variations showed up. And so, it's already been proven that now there's an equation for it, right? For the observer effect. Well, it's a plus or minus because we were watching it, or we weren't watching it. We put it off in the corner and we left it alone. And then there are things where then they did something like watching something grow, and they sat around and spent so much time watching something grow and the effects that the mind could have on affecting something during that time. So it's amazing in that as much as we want to make time a constant, it actually isn't. Other than, they have this special clock in Greenwich, England, that is, down to the, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 decimal places on being correct. Okay, how much time did they waste on that? But, here we go again. So, is it good enough to just spend our time and go, whoa, the sun's up? Wow, great time. You know, whoop, the sun's going down. Time to go to bed. Time to go in. Time to turn on a light. Time to, whatever, get our bodies adjusted. Time to rest for the next day when the sun comes up. So it'll be time to start the day again. See how time just is in everything we do. So it's not a bad thing. I think we should embrace the time that we have. For me, and over the years, I've spent time reflecting on the time I spent wasting time and the dumb things I did during certain times of my life. And, okay, I'm here and fairly healthy. I found out the other day that I have cyst on my kidneys and my prostate is very much enlarged, and I really need to go to the doctor for both of those things, which I'm scheduled for. So I just had a heart attack. Now there's other, bodily functions that are being having issues. So um the time we have left on this planet, how much time is my body going to do this, or you know are the system, my kidneys, or how much time do I have before I have to have something done, or is it past time, or time, time, time? And at my age, you go, well, I have cyst on my kidneys. How much time do I have? Um, how is that going to affect me time wise? Am I going to live longer? Is it going to shorten my life? Is it going to make my time here more painful because I have cysts on my kidneys and my urinary? Oh my God, how much time is? Oh my God, I get doctors and the time I'm going to spend and time. But anyway, now that I'm just taking care of Cecil, I use the sun, yep, to dictate it. Yeah, my mullein plant left a stick up in the yard, and I was outside earlier this afternoon, and I was noticing because it's out there in the yard by itself and nothing around it in the sun, I could see where the shadow was, and I was like, um, my guess on the ground, and I said, well, it looks like it's about 1 o'clock from the position of the shadow from the, which is a sundial. And I came in the house and looked, and it was 20 after 1. And I was like, not bad for just guessing, looking at this stick on in the ground. And so, but that's how that's how the ancients did. If you wanted to be a little more specific about, quote, what time of day it is, if you know where the shadows are at certain times of the day, you can be almost right on the nose almost every day. There's been variations, but you can tell by the shadows from the sun. Oop, it's, 5 o'clock, that 5 o'clock shadow. The older we get, the less we look at the clock. I I I can't answer that the same way because for some reason, and I think it had to do with my days in radio, because you were always looking at the clock, always looking at the clock. You had a commercial, you were looking at the clock. And I don't stare at the clock, but I notice there are times when, I've looked at the clock and I'm not sure why I looked at the clock. Like, damn, didn't I just look at that thing just a few minutes ago? And I ain't got nothing I'm doing. There's nothing in particular, but I think it's because for me, I think part of it is because other than taking my medicines at certain times, that I don't really have anything to be on time for. Or what time is it? Hey, Mr. Steve. Um, so I have, it seems, looked at the clock more when I don't really have any reason to look at the clock, which is interesting. Like, here I am again glancing over at the clock. No particular reason. Habit, I don't know. But for me, now, do I pay attention to the clock? That's a different scenario. Oh, it's 2 o'clock. Yeah, okay. And I look outside and maybe it's I want to see where the sun is shining in the windows or something. But I can say that I don't obsess with time. There are those, can't stop using the word. There are those times when I have to obsess about the time, like if I'm going to do a live stream or something, or I I got to go be on time for the doctor or something, which is rare, but to the point, I want to make sure that my time coincides with theirs and my brain gets it right. So, um, but I don't know if this is the right word. I was going to say the esoteric part of my brain. That might not be the right word I want to use. The philosophical part of my brain, the crazy part of my brain, um, is trying to discern what would time be like on another planet, just for the hell of the sake of thinking about it. Well, if Mars turns slower than us and it's further out, and so what would a day feel like on Venus? It's turning faster than us and it's closer to the sun, and so what would a year feel like there? A year and a quarter, for us here on planet Earth, because Venus is closer to the sun and it's traveling faster. So, its year is faster than ours. So, relatively speaking, again, relatively speaking means there's time involved. Because relative to whatever it was I was thinking about, time wise or otherwise, or position wise, what would it feel like? The guys in space, they're traveling around the Earth and they got a clock and it's set. And they've already noted that there's a difference between being in space, even though it's around the Earth, and being on the Earth, right? There's a time difference. So, what if you're further out in space and still going around? Does the time change? So, because of their orbit, what if their orbit was further out? Would it would take longer? I mean, so the time distortion, um, you know. So an interesting question would be, is there time in space? Huh? Well, so a spaceship is traveling from the Earth to the moon. Does it know how long it takes to get from point A to B? Because it would only be relative to the Earth in how we would time it. So the moon, since the moon takes 28 days in its orbit, so would you, as a lot of the native peoples did, they would look at the moon. How many moons is it? You know, at, you know, uh, you know, a next full moon. Well, depending on if it was a half a moon or if it was a new moon, or they knew how many days it would be. It's going to be about a week. And they could count every night the moon changes. So it's this moon, this moon, this moon. That is the celestial clock. The moon was, still is. So, I was looking at the moon earlier and noticing it's a little higher in the sky and it's about a half moon. And I noticed that on this last, let's see, this last Sunday, but this last Sunday was a half a moon because the Sunday before, which sat 2 weeks ago, Saturday was my birthday, right? And I noticed that it was almost on my birthday was almost on a new moon. So that means that, every 7 days, 28 days. So Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. So last Sunday was a half a moon. And next Sunday, because of the 7 day, 28-day cycle, will be a full moon. So when's full moon going to be? It's not going to be on a Thursday. It's going to be on a Sunday, just how it works out. But anyway, so doesn't matter what the date is, it will be on a Sunday. Now we'll see over time if it shows up on every Sunday, and it should, because every 7 days, so seven Sunday, 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 Sunday. So it should be the full moon or the new moon. You shouldn't have to look on your calendar when it's going to be, because it was already on a particular date. And because the moon follows the 28-day cycle, see, it's relative to the earth and to the moon. So would you time your spaceship? How long does it take to get to the earth to the moon in times of how fast the earth is turning? Or would you use where the moon is in relationship to the earth? You see, it would depend on how you wanted to view time and the passage thereof. You follow me? So a spaceship ain't going to look at time the same way we do. Now, does that mean that time is somehow inverted or that time is somehow distorted? And the answer is yes. It would absolutely be distorted from our perspective. Okay. Alex Collier years ago was talking about, that he had been on several motherships and that, a day for him up there, that it took him a certain amount of Earth time for him to get adjusted to the time on the spaceship that they seem like he's sleeping forever. But in Earth, it's sort of like getting, time lags, sleep lag from flying from one place to another and having, and getting adjusted to quote the new time zone. And our bodies and our brains have to get readjusted to that. So there's lag time. I can't think of it, but you know what I'm talking about. So what would that be like in a spaceship? Well, if y'all remember who Alex, I don't know if he's still alive or not, but Alex Collier, what had been picked up by spaceships and time spent and so forth. But he had mentioned several times about how his adjustment to the time within the spacecraft was different. And I have, thought about this over the many years because I listened to Alex Collier back when he first came out. But the idea of, hmm, how would that be? Because you're not being affected by the Earth's gravity or the influence of the moon or the influence of all the people who are sleeping or awake or what time of day it is. If so that and Mother Earth's internal clock, that we would be in time with it. But if you're out in space, you would not be affected. There wouldn't be any of that to affect you. So how would you react to being in a spaceship versus, the time on Earth? Now, not necessarily speaking about, being in orbit, but literally traveling through space, because then there's no reference unless the spaceship itself has a reference to a star date. But that wouldn't be the same as being affected by the tides, and even though I live inland, I know that the tides still affect me. Why? Because it's how the rhythm of the earth is, and that all these things are connected. But so if you're off flying around in a spaceship, the body's perception of time, because of gravity and all the things around us on this planet, that whether we're aware of it or not still affects us. But to be taken away out of that and out of this worldly environment to a zero environment. I'm in the cosmos flying around. The nearest planet or star is a good ways away. So what is affecting me? The spaceship. Because time within the spaceship then is relative to itself. So whatever the clock is set on the spaceship, that's what time it is, having nothing to do with Earth, unless you try to synchronize with Earth. But there is that, well, if you travel away from Earth and the space between, so if I'm on the other side of the sun and I just traveled lickety split during that time, my time might have changed because of the speed at which I traveled and the fact that I'm in a different location. And so 10 o'clock after traveling to the other side of the sun in like an hour may not be the same time it is on Earth, even though we set our clocks the same. Well, it's approximately, what time is it now? 2:34. Oh my goodness. I've been here another hour. Oh, 2:24. Ooh, we missed a 20. Ah, we can catch up with it, right? Well, my time is your time, so it's time for a 20. But so the idea of time and our perception of it depends on where we are, literally, you know, as far as if we were space traveling or whatever. But so we must, for me, in trying to understand this weird, it's not really a dilemma of time, but it's that time is relative, as the statement goes. And it is very true. It's relative to your position. It's relative to your perspective. It's relative to where you live. It's relative, so if you're not on planet Earth, then it's going to be relative to something else. And I don't know which, but it would be interesting. Um, it would be, for me, it would be interesting to experience it. You know, what does, not necessarily free floating in space, but to be on a spaceship and to be away from the earth. And how does time feel while you're there? What's the environment like? So um, are there time sequences within the spacecraft, for example, that would, show day or night? Or would you try to mimic time, or would the lights always be on? You know what I mean? So, how would you feel time in a spaceship that's way nowhere near the Earth, right? How would it feel? How did them folks feel on Star Trek? Well, they set their times on the spaceship. So, with a 24-hour period, even though the spaceship has its own time with a star date. So they deal with two different types of time within the craft and time related to the universe and where they are. Hmm. Had you ever thought about that? I mean, it's 1600 on the spaceship, which means they must be using military time. So it's all, no matter where they are in the universe, whatever star date, it's still 1600 on the bridge, you know what I mean? Or 1200 or whatever, having nothing to do with where they are in the universe. It's still a certain time on the spaceship. What does that mean? Simply put, time is relative to where you are or your position. So, the idea of time travel then. So, could we actually travel through time? Okay, when time is of a perspective. So, for example, when I actually travel back in time to see prehistoric, critters, or would my perception of that time travel back? In other words, would there actually be any traveling involved? um, in a spatial kind of context, in that, do I actually go back or forward? Um, or are my personal perceptions sent back, or do I physically go back, or does both happen, or is either one possible? Now, I would say that it is possible to take our brains back. Hey, David, how are you? I got the tractor fixed. uh, Yeah, but I shouldn't be smoking. I'm reading back up to what Tracy said. I'm really trying to cut back. I mean, I'll let a cigarette sit here and just sit there, and I'll look at it and go ahead. You know, for today, I was thinking for every one of them cigarettes is like a bullet to the heart. And how many times I want to shoot myself, you know? And it's really difficult to not want to smoke a little bit of weed. Now I'm I will smoke just a little bit. How I draw it in has changed. How long I try to hold it. I mean, I have modified my behavior and even how I smoke the cigarettes, as far as how I draw it in, how big of a a drag do I take. All that's changed, but I still, I need to do better. I just need to do better. Now, I was really proud today when I was like, uh, last Thursday, I think it was, when I went in and had my test done for my kidneys and everything. They did a sonogram of me again. I'm still not pregnant. Um, and I bought a couple of other packs of cigarettes, and I already had, I think, about 2 packs here, and I bought 3 more or something, knowing I wasn't going to go to the store for at least another week or so, which is true. And now I'm out of milk, and I need a loaf of bread, and but I still got 3 whole packs of cigarettes up there, and this one's, I just broke into it today, and today's gone, and I'm into tomorrow. So the fact that, I was like, it took me 3 days to smoke 1 pack of cigarettes, and that's not bad, you know. Um, but a couple of days before that, I was doing something, and I'd smoked 3/4 of a pack in one day, and I was livid with myself, going, man, that's just nah. But several got, burned up in the ashtray, um, and several of them I was just sitting here, just kind of letting it burn down. And I'd go, oh, and I'd take a drag. But still, you know, for every time and I want to take another hit off of this bowl. It's almost done. But I haven't been smoking continuously. And today I only smoked a little bit. And right now I'm just in the mood because I'm smoking with y'all, kind of thing. But anyway, yeah, there's almost nothing in here. So rather than try to inhale so much into my lungs, I inhale it into my mouth and blow it out through my nose, because your nose has all them little membranes and everything. And it's sort of like your lungs, you know, so that you can get high by breathing it through your nose, right? But anyway, so, and that was a good hit, by the way. Um, so sometimes when I'm smoking a cigarette, just holding the smoke in my mouth without really trying to breathe it into my lungs, I'm still getting that secondhand smoke, and it gives me my nicotine fix, you know? It's not a good excuse, but it's better than what I was doing, and I'm trying to improve, but it takes time. Because for the last 50 odd years, I've been smoking something. It started out with cigarettes, but by the time I was 17, I was smoking weed, and I've been smoking almost all the time, both of them. So, the fact that my heart is not in worse shape, is like, but anyway, it's time to do better. See, it's still related to what I'm talking about here. But listen, it's been 2 hours and 4 minutes, and I did 2 hours with Robert earlier, and I would like to hang out with you longer, but it's time for me to take my before I go to bed meds. And it's 1:30 my time, but 2:30 hospital time. And I want to make sure that I get myself to bed. And I know 3 o'clock should be easy for me to hit tomorrow afternoon. But I've got some kind of test for checking lung capacity or something, some kind of breathing test. I don't know what it is, but I just know that I have to go to the hospital for it. And maybe it's has another something to do with um, the sound thingy, because they did sound for my aorta. They did sounds for my kidneys and bladder and prostate. Um, and I guess they can point it in different directions of your body cavity, and with the different things that they've learned and the different frequencies and tones that they use, they get different results. So I'm not sure what the test is going to be tomorrow, but I just know it's at 3 o'clock time, you see. So, but anyway, my dear friends, it has been a lovely time hanging out with you. I know this has been just a crazy time talking about time and all the different aspects of it. And, I had thought, let me touch briefly before I go with this. I think somebody earlier on in the chat said something about the fourth dimension. Again, the idea of time in the fourth dimension would not be the same as the third dimension. Why? Very simple explanation. It's because of our perspective. So if we're in the fourth dimension, our perspective is going to be different than we here in the third dimension now. Hey, Michelle, how are you? And so our perspective of time in 3D is not going to be the same as our perspective in any other dimensionality. It doesn't matter. Now, there's probably folks who would argue, well, what's the fourth and the third can exist at the same time. Yeah, but our perception of it. So if the folks in the fourth dimension are experiencing a 24-hour day here on the planet Earth differently than we are because we're in the third dimension. So spirit beings ain't feeling the same hours per day that we are. They're floating around and doing their thing. And do they care what quote time it is? But I would bet you that they are very much aware of time in their little spherical floating around kind of orby thing that they do, right? And that's not counting other entities or interdimensional beings, but from being in another dimension, the time differential is going to be different. And so fourth dimensional time ain't going to be the same. It's not going to feel the same. It ain't going the clocks might be the same, but it ain't going to feel the same. So our perception of it, would the clocks be synchronized between third and fourth dimensions? I would scratch my head and go, I don't feel that I have actually spent time in the fourth dimension. So therefore, I don't have a reference point as to what time would feel like in the fourth dimension. I know that I have spent time in the dream time where it seems like hours and days, or maybe even a year, has gone by in a dream. And it's only been a few minutes or moments, or you might have dreamt something for an hour or two. But the idea that the experience within the dream time, that that in and of itself is a dimensionality, if you will. Is it the fourth dimension? No, but we can kind of sort of use it as a reference point because we're not really here. We're sort of there, but we're here in our bodies and our clock's ticking, the heart's beating, the brain's working, neurons are flashing, which is all taking time to do, you see. So, but in that time, which is third dimensional in our bodies, in that 3D self, we're in the 4D of the dream. So, time is not the same in the dream as it is when we're awake, or even in a semi conscious dream state, it's not the same. If you've ever been had that um, sleep paralysis kind of thing where you're half asleep and half awake and you can't seem to move anything, you know, and I like being in that state because it's like I'm in two places at the same time. I'm in the dream state and I'm aware of my body, but I ain't awake enough to move it, you know? I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. He likes to move it, move it. He likes to, okay, that's enough. But so the idea in the dream state, so you're having that dream, but you realize you're starting to wake up. So now you're in two places, guess what? At the same time, right? So, but the time in the dream state is not the same, 60 seconds on the clock deal, right? Why? Because our perception in the dream state, it's the perception, is different. So, whatever time seems to be happening in the dream state, ain't, we're trying to relate it to something in the real world. So I'm in the dream and I'm sitting around with people and it's nighttime and we're having conversation and there is a perception of time passage while we have this conversation. Well, how long? I don't know. We were sitting in a diner and having coffee. And while we were talking, well, it felt like it was an hour or it felt like we just stopped in for 20 minutes, a piece of pie and coffee, and we were gone. Versus, well, we some friends came in and we ended up having, waffles and toast and scrambled eggs and we were there for an hour and a half or so. So, but what's going on in the dream dictates the time spent in the action of the dream. Now, this is heavy duty. So, whatever the action is, so if I've dreamt that I was on the river paddling, well, how far did I paddle? Well, it seemed like I paddled for 2 hours when actually I was glimpsing time. So from the start of the time that I paddled till the end. So really, it wasn't really running in in fast forward, but I was taking chunks of it so that it seemed like it was an hour when actually, it was a minute of dream time. But the perception in the dream was that I was paddling for an hour, you know, the experience was there. And maybe the dream lasted for a couple of minutes, or maybe I dreamt for an hour that I was paddling. And so, but the experience of that hour of dream was 5 or 6 or 7 hours on the river. And the experience of driving there in my dream, getting out, putting the boat back on and driving home, and that whole experience. And so it wasn't just time, but in the dream time, when you wake up, it's like, well, wow, I just had this dream that I was camping on the river and we did all these things. And hell, I've only been asleep for a couple hours. So how could you have this experience? You know what I mean? So my explanation of why I don't think time in the fourth dimension would be the same as the third dimension is because of time in the dream time, in the dream state. Time is not the same, and it's not the same in every dream. So it's relative to what's in the dream, what's going on, and it's relative to where we're sleeping and how much time, if we're tired or not. I mean, that's all got kind of sort of got something to do with it. But as far as being in the dream time at the same time as you're almost awake and the clock's going to go off and you're having this duality, at early morning and something you hear that brings you out of the dream and into the 3D reality and out of the dream state. But what can go on in that just before you wake up time out of a dream? A lot can go on in 5 minutes or 2 minutes, waiting on the clock to go off, or if you've hit the snooze button and you're still a little bit in the dream or whatever, and you're really not awake, but you got to wake up and you're kind of hungover. So you're still in the dream time. Okay. And whatever time was going on there. So if you were out playing golf with the guys and it was your time to tee off and then you start waking up. So, you're still going to tee up. But how long does, if you played golf, how long does it actually take you to tee up and take a swing? So, and the next thing you know, you're putting on the 18th hole and you've just had you've just played a full, round of golf with the guys. And there are little spots and things and glimpses of this 18 holes that flash by in your brain in literally a matter of seconds sometimes. But the experience of the whole of playing 18 holes and that you've gone to the clubhouse. So there is the experience or the completion of it, right? Whether you actually experience the whole 18 holes or not. The after effect of it is that you finished 18 holes. Or, oh my God, I worked all night long building this thing. And when actually it might not have been that you did it all night long, but in your head, you've worked on a project, you dug a hole, you painted a room, and oh my God, I all I could do was, when I was doing a lot of painting back in the day, sometimes I would dream of painting the next room and then wake up the next morning and go, God Almighty, all I dreamt about was painting this room because how I was going to do it, I needed to tape it off, how many windows, blah, 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 getting the rollers out. I mean, all night long I did this, and you get there the next day and some bitch if you ain't got to paint that room again, and God Almighty, all night long I spent. But did I spend in the dream time? Did I actually spend all night long dreaming it? Or did I dream it for 10 minutes and it felt like I did it all night long? You see. So in that dream time, which is kind of sort of a glimpse, and I would consider the fourth dimension, or at least not of the third, okay, in that time is not the same. And you can probably relate to it your own if you've had dreams and you can whatever. Time ain't the same as it is when we're awake. That's just all there is to it. Even though the clock is still ticking, even though it doesn't change, it's still 60 seconds, 60 minutes, it's still moving. Our perception of it is different from our own mental, position, the observer point of view. So, as an observer, it felt like I was there for 2 days, but was only a little bit of time. So, yeah, the more and my guys are saying, yeah, time up there is not the same as time down here. It just ain't. And and the best example of time not being the same from the third to the fourth is the example that I was given about um and try it for yourself. If you're having a dream or whatever, try to realize how much time is this taking. And like for example, for me, I get up to pee every hour or so. And so I can look at the clock and go, oh, well, it's, quarter after two. Okay. And I go back to sleep. And then if I wake up later on and I've had a dream, I can go, wow, that was a strange dream. It seemed like it took forever. What time is it? Well, it's only been 45 minutes later. Well, in my head, it's been 45 minutes of actual time, where in the dream it felt like days, or at least a day, or an extended period of time, you see. So we can make certain judgments depending on your pee schedule in the middle of the night, like me, that it's like, damn, I gotta wake up again, gotta pee, some bitch, and you're coming out of a dream and you can go, well, it was only an hour since my last time I was up. Wow, whatever I've dreamt in that period of time, wow, that was interesting. Whoa, really went through a bunch of stuff there. So, but you can judge it yourself. And in your own time period and whatever you wake up, or I just went to sleep and you wake up 2 hours later or something, or whatever it might be. um or if you hit the snooze button, for example, and you're still in a dream and you barely reached the clock and hit that button, and you got 15 minutes or whatever it is, and so you're still in that dream time. And what goes on in your dream, there are times when, oh man, I really want to finish this and see where it goes. And sometimes it flows right on out. And you wake up a few minutes later and go, wow, there was like a half a day's worth of stuff that finished out in the dream, or conversation between two people or something or an event. And you wake up and go, well, I hit the snooze button at 7 and at 7:15. In that 15 minutes, all this stuff transpired. You can give it sort of a time span in relation to dream time and wake up 3D time. Okay. Am I making sense? But anyway, to most people, who gives a crap? I mean, literally, who cares? But from an observational point, for me, all of my life has just been, hmm, ain't that interesting? You know, how long did that take? Hmm, it seemed like it took forever. Somehow relating again to time. Wow, in that, in those thoughts that I had, there was a bunch of time in there, you know. I remember when I was a kid, and so my brain flips through little, place cards, a Rolodex, if you will, and it's going back in time. So there's a picture of this when I was a little kid, then there's my house, and then there's this, and all these things transpire within a couple of seconds, literally within a couple of seconds. Flip, 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 flip. And the time spent to remember some of these things. Now I can spend more time and go into more detail. But I'm like, oh, Margaret Avenue, little kid, when I was a kid, and I can see the neighborhood, and it's all just these split second little pictures, which when you understand the amount of time that passed with the pictures and what it represents, within a millisecond, I can go back in time to when I was a kid and go back 60 years. You know what? So I can time travel within a split second to 60 years ago, to a memory, or to a place, or to a thought, or to a feeling, or something that I witnessed. I remember a house burning down behind our house, and the old man shot himself while he watched his house burnt down. And we were all standing in the field. We literally saw him shoot himself. Now it was dark and everything, but now I immediately went back to a place in time and to how many years ago, and to a situation, seeing the firemen there, seeing us standing in the field, and and in a way witnessing this old man shoot himself right there because he was lonely. Anyway, so the amount of time that it took to recall that thought, but in there was all this time, the events of the firemen, the fire, but it in those few thoughts of less than a second or two represents the time, the space that it went, the time travel, the time that the event occurred. Time. But it was shrunk into it. And here I am trying to describe this. So the time that it takes to recall that memory of 60 some years ago and the event and what it looked like and it's the time that the event took place, not the date or the time, but the time that um, it took the event to happen, are on these little slides that flip by. But those little slide shows represent the amount of time it took. You know what I'm, you see? So that's relative. That's not even in the dream time. It's in our memory time. But what the time it represents of, oh my God, that was 60 years ago. And oh my God, I was 10 years old. And oh my God, all these things accumulate within split seconds. Wow. So those memories within split seconds of time can recall 60 years ago. And the event where the house burning down, which took an hour, and the event that this, and it's all squashed into a couple of seconds, and in a minute or two of me having conversation. Wow. So we can time travel within seconds to our own memories and then recall them and pull them back and relate them in just a few minutes of time, of something that took years or months or hours or weeks, or and the experience thereof, that time that it took. You see, it gets complicated, but it's still an interesting study. So, but anyway, I was going to shut up a time or two back. I also had this, had to be kind of parallel. Oh, the Rumps, how are you? I didn't see you being there. I'm sorry, I didn't have my glasses on. Oh, yours looks similar to Tracy's. That's I'm. It was a similarity without my glasses. Rome in there. Yeah, planes of existence. Yeah, and with the pictures that I've taken of orbs and things, they're existing in mine now, but they're existing in their own reality. you know? Yeah, so I know older people have a tendency to sleep more. I was chatting with my sister a couple of weeks ago and she goes like she goes, sometimes in the afternoon I just gotta lay down and take a nap. And I'm like, well, good, because I thought it was me. And it just gets to the point where I can't sit up. I have got to take a nap. And sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's 2 hours, sometimes it's the rest of the day, and I wake up and the freaking sun's going down. And for me, as a shaman in training, I try to look at those sleep times as what y'all been, what am I doing in that dream time? Am I just out and there's no dream? Has my brain just shut off? What's going on in during, here we go again with that time? And it's been very, very, very interesting. Now, since we're talking about time and it's 2 hours and 31 minutes into this time, um, I talked about this a couple of months ago and probably at the beginning of last month of September, this being the 5th of October. Supposedly, at the beginning of October, which we are in, is supposed to be the big cosmic happening. Oh, it's gonna happen in the beginning of October. Y'all have been waiting that it's gonna happen in the beginning of October. Guess what? They said it's time. Now, here we are with another deadline, if you will, when the Galactic said, "Oh, the thing from the center of the thing and all this stuff's going to happen. It's time. The 1st of October, without a doubt, this is it. The Great Awake. Here we are." Okay, here we are. And hello, is it time yet? I mean, it's 1st of October, y'all. Now, my folks didn't say that. Them folks said it, and my folks were like, we'll wait and see." Because every time they have said that it's time for the last several years now, it still hasn't been time. Now, we are getting stuff off solar flares and stuff that are literally coming in today, tomorrow, from some solar flares. So we are getting some solar stuff coming in, but I don't think it's going to be what the Galactics and them folks were talking about. Ooh, it's time. Now, they do have this cushion because back a few months ago, they said November. And then they said, nah, it's going to be October. They stepped it up. Okay. And I'm like, okay, maybe you should have left it in November. But but here's the thing. I have given up waiting and wasting time on this event to happen. Now, however many years it's been that it's supposed to have happened, we've had little mini events, but not like oh, this is going to be the big deal. Still ain't happened. So, within this next 30 days ish, it's supposed to happen. It's supposed to happen before Thanksgiving. All right. But I'm just pointing out what time it is and what they said by their time. Just saying, you know, what else are we going to do but wait on this? Well, I'm not necessarily waiting on it, like looking at my clock, but they did say the first of the month, and here it is. So I'm kind of looking at my clock going, okay, guys, now what? Or is there going to be a what? Just saying. Y'all said there was, so here we are. Now what? Maybe nothing. I you know, there is a part of me that believes that there are cosmic energies that are have been headed this way for a while, and that whether or not they're going to show up this month or next month, we're getting bombarded by stuff from out of the cosmos all the time. So, but it's been the fact that there have been folks who have been predicting these things that I'm like, well, okay. And I've been on board with some of this stuff for a long time, but I'm also from Missouri or Missouri or Missouri, some folks would like, um, but that show me state. And so far, they ain't showed me nothing. Now, my folks have just said that there are changes coming, and those changes have been slight. And some of the things like, well, different political things and stuff that is, the abortion thing that started, riling things up and this thing and that thing. And, so they're always trying to keep things riled up. They're trying to keep the chaos going, right? So, well, that's sort of expected. But is it something that's just the whole planet's gonna, ooh, well, that hasn't really happened yet. They did a pretty good job with, faking us out and giving us the shyster thing, with the virus and all, and they're trying to do it again. There's commercials about, make sure you get a vaccine for this, and and if you're not that, get a. They're selling vaccines, left and right from all kinds of things. The HPO virus or something, and the this virus, and the, well, you better get this one virus, and you better get this vaccine. And so they're trying to keep that chaos going to keep our brains, you know, goofyfied, in a time when folks need to be, being less stressed about stuff. But they worry about their children. They worry about paying the house bills. They worry about paying insurance. They just worry about all kinds of stuff in this day and time. And I gotta say, you know, keep your thoughts, keep it between the ditches. Um, whether you're going fast or slow, keep it between the ditches. Stay out of the ditches. you know, Try not to stop in the middle of a 4-lane highway, with semis going around you. That could be bad. But at least keep plodding on your road of life. Um, every day is a day that we need to learn how to adapt because certain people, certain situations, depending on conditions, um, things are changing by the minute, by the hour, by the day, and we have to adapt to those conditions. So, it's time to stay out of the chaos. Don't let it bother us. Well, the days are getting shorter. Winter's coming on. Okay, don't freak out. It happens every year about this time. Chill out. Well, what about this? Well, just relax. If you've noticed over time, this has happened before. We've had bad hurricanes before. They may not have hit Florida like they did this last time, but yes, they have hit Florida, and yes, Orlando, and yes, hurricanes have gone all the way across the state. Yes, have they been this severe? No. Is it about climate change? The climate's always changing. So, duh. And I got to mention, though, that on the radars of the storm, it looked like something was pushing it because streaks were showing up on the Gulf side of the storm, and they showed up on all the radars and of these beams coming from somewhere out in the Gulf, which, from my perspective, would have meant that they were trying to push the storm towards the coast. And they were great big wide beams that just shot across the radar screen, and one down here and one across here. And I was like, "Ooh, crap, look at that. Are they trying to steer this storm?" Oh, but that's not supposed to actually happen. I'm more inclined that there are human factors making these storms move certain directions and attain certain climactic stuff through heating of the atmosphere, different things, and that they can steer these storms with bursts of energy. There's just a lot of proof that that's possible, at least. There's a lot of other information going back to the days of Lyndon Johnson that he who controls the weather can, controls the world. And I absolutely believe that human beings are affecting storms. And the idea of climate change has to do more with folks who are dilly-dallying with the atmosphere. And here we go. It's time for them folks to stop that mess. But if they was going to blame it on something, they should blame it on the folks that tinker with this stuff. You know, oh, it doesn't really exist. Yeah, it does, and it shows up on the radar. But there's my 2 cents on that subject. But the time it takes for a storm, the time it takes to rebuild, the time it takes. Now, me, for example, I moved out of Florida back in 71 or 2 because I said, I ain't putting up with this no more down here. Now, we've had bad storms come into Southwest Georgia, and I've been hit more times than Tampa or along the west coast of Florida's been hit. We've been hit more up here in the Panhandle than when I left down there in Tampa area. So, I walked into the storms instead of getting out of them, but I'm not near the coast. But, anybody that rebuilds on any of them islands down there or within a mile of the ocean is a damn fool. Why do people live down there? Why do all them houses? My aunt, who has been dead for quite a few years, used to live on Sanibel Island. We used to go down there and beach and frolic on the weekends and go down and visit my aunt who lived down there on Sanibel. Long before some of those bridges were built. I mean, back in the 60s, right? And how pristine it was. And then for me to look at some of the overhead views of all the stuff that was on Sanibel Island now, or was before the storm, I was like, what all them crazy people do that for? Why would they build right down there so much? And oh, to live on the beach, yeah, yeah. But then they bitch and complain because the storm wiped them out. Oh, I've lived here for 20 years, and you were lucky. And I've done this, and and we've lived here. Yeah, but do you want to rebuild and take the risk of in the next 20 years losing out again? Should you really build in these wetlands? I mean, there are sad pictures of people's whose houses are flooded from the rivers and stuff. that are halfway up the windows in their house, right? And I gotta say, you dummy, you built a house on a floodplain. How high off sea level are you? Well, here where my house is 6 foot above sea level. There's a 10-foot storm surge. That means that it's going to be 5 foot up the wall of your house. Okay. It's not only going to flood your yard, it's going to go 5 foot up beside your house. Everybody's got GPS these days. I mean, it's easy to check how high off of sea level you are. And if you live in those prone areas of storm surge or whatever, and you continue to build on the ground without building up on stilts or something, you a dumbass. And if you still gonna, you're how far above sea level are you? Well, I'm 3 or 4 feet, and you're gonna go back. You're gonna rebuild, dumbass. I'm sorry. Around here, if I would people say, well, you could build something down in your backyard. No, I can't. Well, why? Well, because every few years or so it floods. Well, does it flood every year? No. Well, but it floods. So, it could be that it doesn't flood. It hasn't really flooded for a good year and a half or so. It don't mean that we're not going to get a tropical storm and come up here and flood my backyard. It was flooded earlier this year. It's been dry since, but to the point though, do I know when it's going to flood? No. But does it flood? Yes. Am I going to build anything back there? No, because I ain't a dumbass. you know, use your sense. But there are people who they just got to live on the beach. They just got to live on the coast. They just got to live on the side of a river, but not with poles. And then when it floods, oh my God, all the climate, oh this, oh that, we've lost everything. And I just got to say, I'm sorry, but you live in a flood zone, and you live in a flood zone. And you live in a flood zone. And you live in a flood zone, you dumbass. And then you worry about, oh, I've lost everything because you live in a flood zone. And I'm sorry for them folks. I know a lot of folks that live down in Florida and down around Ruskin and Gibtown. I've got friends down there, and and they live just barely above sea level. And so when it floods, I hate it for them. But y'all live in a flood zone. You're 5 feet above sea level and you had a 10-foot storm surge. I'm sorry. I have warned you all for years. Get out of the flood zones. Find a house that's built up. Find a hill. Build a hill. Make a 10-foot hill and put your house on it. But for God's sakes, you're 5 foot above sea level. And everything is flat. There's no hills, no nothing. And when any kind of storm comes, you end up being flooded. But then you continuously live there. Well, I like it down here. Okay. Well, then you will tolerate you being flooded whenever it comes time for you to be flooded, and you will accept it. Okay. And you'll quit bitching about it. And if a storm comes in or it rains a lot because you're so close to sea level and you flood, I'm sorry, it's your own damn fault. I moved out of there, and there are other people moving down there. When my sister was up here, she was talking about all the new houses they were building down in that area that would have been just north of the storm path, right? That they're building 1 million homes down there. And so, um, but the thing is that some of those houses are barely above sea level. I mean, barely. You know, they're dredging dirt out of the canals and stuff to build it up high enough so that the house will be high enough to put a septic tank in. So, it's nuts. But they've been doing it down in Florida for a long time. But do I have pity on them folks that live down there and choose to live down there? And I'm sorry big storms come through. I don't wish harm on anyone, but there's too many times when the water is going to come up and y'all just ain't prepared because you're living at sea level. So, but anyway, I think it's time for people to reconsider some of these things because times they are a changing, as Dylan wrote or somebody back in the day. The times they are a changing, blah, 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 hold your nose and sing the song. Yeah. Oh, Bobby D. Um, but in the times to come, it's going to be interesting how people spend their time in the cleanups of the storm. Having lived through it, there's still signs of when Michael came through here, them 5-ish years ago. I mean, the trees down in my backyard, the things, there's still, devastation that's around that can be seen and look how far inland I am from the coast. So, thank goodness there's not a lot of stuff in the panhandle. Um, but people have been a little smarter about building right on the coast. Um, and along Carabel and Apalachicola is called the Forgotten Coast. And folks have been a little bit wiser over the years in that, um, they're smarter than to build right on the damn beach. Now, there are some homes that they have built in some of those communities down there, but they're smart enough that everything's up off the ground. They're up on stilts, they're on concrete pillars. They're made to withstand hurricanes. And, when Camille came through many, many years ago and killed so many people on the Gulf Coast, and all the bad hurricanes we've had since, people have learned. But people down there, seeing the devastation in the Sarasota and Fort Myers area, they ain't learned a damn thing because they haven't been hit as hard as the folks have up here in the Panhandle. I mean, everything's concrete and up on stilts and really built for hurricanes. And they got mobile homes and stuff down there on Sanibel and down in the Fort Myers area. And it's like everything's built to wash away, everything's built to flood. I'm on a tirade with this. I know. I'm sorry for them people. I really and truly am. But if they don't make changes and it happens again, I got, I'm okay. I'm sorry. I have no feelings for your loss. Empathy, no. If you got no other place to live or something, but this idea that you're going to rebuild and that you're going to stay down there and you're going to continue to take chances and you're going to ride out the storm and okay, been there, done that. But I'm 100 and some odd miles from the coast and we still get hit. you know I'm just saying, you know I think I'd be a little further from the ocean than what some of these people been doing. So anyway, I kind of got off the subject of time, but in the time that it's going to take time for them to rebuild down there, just like it's taken time to rebuild parts of the Panhandle and southern Alabama and around. Mobile hasn't really been hit. they've been lucky. Um, that they have skirted a little bit to the left or to the right. You know, we've been hit harder in the Apalachicola region area of Florida more than anybody else, I believe. As far as it hitting Alabama or Mississippi or even Texas or Louisiana. The panhandle of Florida has been hit more times since I've lived here. And I moved up here to get away from those storms. But anyway, enough of the storm thing. I'm still praying for folks because I have, neighbors and friends and folks who live down there and who are going through some of it, and who I continue to say, y'all ought to move to higher ground. And you don't necessarily have to move out of Florida, but you should move away, get away from, you know, um, on the beach or next to the beach or a mile or two from the beach. You should check your flood zone. Um, and I'm praying that it's time people will reevaluate. That's why this subject has to do with time. So, but anyway, it's 2:20 something. Holy mackerel, I missed another 20, didn't I? Well, it's empty. So, but anyway, I'm going to leave you all. It's been almost 3 hours that I've been visiting with you, and Michelle and Steve and David and Daronsk. Oh, and Deborah, how are you? I forgot. I've seen you there and was yapping. What is supposed to happen? I guess I missed that part. Oh, Deborah, the galactics have been talking about this cosmic energy coming from the middle of the galaxy that's going to come, and there's going to be like we're going to move to the fourth dimension, and everybody on the planet's going to, you know, come to this higher realm of thinking, and this cosmic energy is going to change everything on the planet Earth. I mean, they've been talking, some of these galactic folks have been talking about this for years. I love you too, sweetie. It's been very quiet in my dream time here, but I want to tell you, Michelle, there've been a lot of prayers been going out. A lot of prayers. So Deborah, it's the cosmic thing, it ain't happened yet. So, supposedly all of this stuff was going to happen, and I do believe that there are cosmic um energies, forces, stuff that are being emitted from the center of our galaxy. They're coming out of the sun. They're coming out of um, different star systems. We're getting, bombarded with different kinds of cosmic waves and stuff. So, but this idea that there was one spotted years ago by scientists that was supposed to come, that was headed from the center of the galaxy out. And because we're way out on one of these little fingers, it was going to be a while before it reached us. And so I still have a tendency to believe that there are these waves that are coming from the center of the galaxy and other places too. And that we have kind of sort of been waiting on one. And they've estimated this thing, but there again, their estimation has to do with years and time on our planet, not necessarily cosmic time. And that wave might just be taking its good old cosmic time to get here. But, there are those folks that I've been listening to for years now about how, oh, this, come, all the galactics are getting together, the war is going to be over. Now, Dante and them, they've been showing a lot of different things, and the war with different alien factions are absolutely going on. He did 2 short videos today on his channel, if they're still up, of these light beams shooting up in, and different, cloud patterns and things. A lot of stuff gets hidden in the clouds. And so there's definitely ET stuff going on. But whether or not it's going to, whatever that's going to come about is going to happen like soon, don't know. But it's going to be interesting if it does. And I'm still waiting, along with a lot of other people. Some folks have just give up. I think William Shatner saw it. Saw what, David? I was wondering because those beams were on his video. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've seen similar things myself, down here in South Georgia going, what? I've seen stars that aren't on any star charts twinkle in places that they shouldn't be twinkling. And not to put Shatner aside, but a lot of us have seen strange phenomena. I mean, that time I saw that one spaceship shoot the other one down with a laser, I was like, no way. And the other day I was watching some animation and the spaceships were shooting each other and I was like, I have actually seen a laser come from one and shoot another one and it vanish. And so I have seen it in real time. And so when I watch a movie of some of these things, and my thought is started going into, if you had a beam that you could shoot that would hit something, how far would that beam travel? Now, if it's a beam of laser beam, would it just keep going forever through space? Or on some of these, you see the beam, they're within range, Captain. All right. So you got to be within a certain range. But if light is supposed to continue traveling, okay, follow me, then it wouldn't have a range. So if you shot at it, now it would be more powerful the closer you got. I could see that. But if you're shooting a light beam and it's, an intense laser, here we go, how shouldn't it just keep going? What stops the light? Now I've used lasers out here in the woods. I used a carpenter's level laser to shoot a line through the woods down for my property line. And I noticed it was really bright the closer I got to where I had it set up on the post. And the closer I got to the river, which meant I was further away from the beam. So why wasn't if it now I could see because I'm on the earth and there's atmosphere and stuff and there's moisture and things and air that can slow the beam down or so that after 100 feet this thing is not near as bright as it is at 50 feet, but it's a laser. So but out in space where there ain't supposed to be nothing to slow stuff down, how far would that laser travel? So they have shot lasers to the moon and have them bounce back. So they've done tests like that. So lasers apparently can go a long way. So if there is a battle in space and all these lasers are shooting at each other, so this laser who misses and is headed out into space. So what if there's an innocent bystander, a couple 100,000 clicks away, and all of a sudden they just get hit by this laser beam? You know what I mean? These things just shooting off and they haven't hit anything, but they're still going. How far do they go? How far would they go? And are they only good for certain distances? Well, then what happens after that? Where does the light go? Okay. It's only good up to this far. Okay. I got a new flashlight. This thing is brighter than, oh my God. It will shine up the hill. Let me tell you. And a birthday present for my neighbors. But oh my God. But then it goes up the hill to my neighbors and then it just isn't. So it goes and it lights up everything, but then all of a sudden there just isn't any light. Where does the light go? I mean, if it's a beam of light, where does the light go? Does it get absorbed? I'm just an oddity. So where do the lasers go? How far can the lasers go out in space as opposed to just a curiosity? Anyway, so I'm out of here. It's been 3 hours and 5 minutes and 45 seconds. I love you all. It's been great hanging out with you. And, Crazy Dave comes up with some of the craziest things. But, you know, those, if light is supposed to just keep on traveling until it bumps something, then why does it just give out? Where does it go? Good night to you, Deborah and Michelle and David and anybody else that's hanging out. If Barry's still awake, I love you all. I do. Please take care of yourself. Keep it between the ditches. And I, there are strange things coming because of the elections and all. This next month is going to be very, very, very interesting on a bunch of different levels. So I would say take the time to keep an eye on stuff, but also take the time to be joyful. Find something you can laugh at. And there's so many things that are so serious, like nuclear war, and we're all going to die, and Putin's going to push the button. I'm laughing at it, okay? Because I just think it's absurd. It's way past time of being scared. And if one of these dumbasses do push the button, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens where whatever they aim at each other goes. So, yes, Michelle, it is always interesting. And, some days are better than others. And I just want to throw the book at some of these idiots. But I think to myself, now, and I'm watching politics and stuff go by, and, because I'm supposed to keep up with some of this stuff. I had the computer off for 2 days. I wouldn't even look at this thing. So there was a lot of news I had to catch up on. And I was just like, man, it's just the same old shit, just wrapped in a different day and a different time. That's all. Oh my God, okay, this person's, oh my God, this person's doing, oh my God. And it's just like, okay, all righty. Well, y'all have a great morning. Have a great rest of the week. Wish me luck for my test tomorrow at the hospital. It's non-invasive, but it's been interesting that they didn't find stuff and now they have found stuff. So, got to have more tests done. Got to be poked and prodded about my kidneys and so forth. I hope that's not serious. And I know I've been having issues with my prostate. That's one of the reasons why I went to the doctor. I knew I was having issues. So now that they've taken a sonic picture of it and they verified I do have, um, issues with my prostate and prostate. There's no R there. Um, Prostrate is to lay flat, to lie flat. But anyway, so more tests to get done, and I'm just, fingers crossed. But every day is very interesting. And, just go with the flow, y'all. It's going to be this next 30 days, in all accounts, And for since the beginning of the year, I've been talking about this time of the year was going to be interesting. And now, whether or not we get that cosmic juice coming through, who knows? But the election's coming up for the midterms, and that it's going to be chaos. The stuff we're getting in the mail and the this and the that, just get some popcorn, take a ride, and we'll just ride this one out. So until next time, I will continue to pray for you all. Each and every day, I continue to pray that each and every one of you will continue to learn how to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings that are out there in the universe. And me and Duggar, every time we go outside, which is often, we continue to pray that each and every day, that each and every one of you will continue to learn to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many, 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 many blessings in the universe. And in that law of three, which is important to me and to the universe, it seems, that I continue to pray that each and every day, that each and every one of you will continue to learn to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings that are available in the universe. So I pray things go good for you. Yeah, it's just another test. I think they're going to do my lungs tomorrow. It's because of my COPD and all the years of smoking, almost 60 years of smoking, literally, because I started when I was about 12, and I'm 70. So almost 60 years, got to take a toll on you somewhere. So it's as much as I want a cigarette, I'm not going to light one right now. And the bowl's empty. So I'm going to leave that one alone. But it's up to me. How much longer do I want to live? Well, you want to keep smoking cigarettes and these other things, and every time you do, that's a hit on your heart, you know. So that seconds off the clock in time. So I love you all. Please be safe. Cheers, everybody. Keep an eye to the skies because I think there's going to be some more strange things going on in the heavens above us. And I don't mean necessarily cosmically, but there's some weird UFOs flying around out there. I just got to say. But anyway, be safe, duck and cover if it comes to that. And I love you. And until next time, um, cheers right back at you, the Rumsk. And I literally, yesterday was a more of a sleep day than I wanted, but I found out that my sinuses were bothering me and I had a slight bit of fever going on and that I might actually have a touch of cold or something. And so I was like, well, that's a good reason why I just felt like sleeping, to get better. But during that time I woke up I in my dream state and I was like different people came to mind that y'all in the chat room and I'm like, Michelle and Deborah and different folks just was coming up in my dream state, and I was like, "Yeah, I hope everything's going all right, and pray for y'all, and go down my little list." It's sort of like a kaleidoscope of folks' names, and you know, and um, so I literally am praying all the time for folks. It it kind of astonishes me that there are times when, wow, there are prayers going out in my subconscious that I go, whoop, wow, there was a prayer for such and such, or whoop, something, or David Castle will come to mind, or it's just the oddest thing. But um, I also realize for myself, humbly speaking to myself, and I'm just going to relate this, but it was that the prayers that I send out on a daily basis, several times a day, consciously, unconsciously. And I thought to myself, because I was kind of down and out myself and not feeling the best. And I was like, not looking for sympathy or prayers back, but I was like, the thought came, it's a heavy burden that I have accepted, that I have accepted the prayers as a monk would in during meditation. I've talked about this before, when I had talked with some monks at Catholic monasteries and so forth. And like, how can you guys pray all the time? What's up with that? And how can you do this and still do other work? And, what's up with that? And so over the years, like I can understand it a little more in different ways, but I was like, man, I really don't feel like doing anything, but prayers were going through my head anyway. And I'm like, man, I can barely, yeah, but there's a prayer going out to somebody. And it didn't take an effort like, oh my God, I got to send prayers out today. It wasn't like that. But I was like, even on my worst days, the prayers still go out. And that once, and I've accepted it, but once I say you, me, whoever, accepts the idea of this, and burden is not the right word, okay? But when you accept the prayer burden, that this is what I'm going to do. I have, made a promise to the universe that I'm going to say prayers. This is my meditation thing during the day, and I'm going to always send out this, going to learn how to do it. That's my shaman in training. I'm going to learn how to meditate all day and send prayers out and continue I don't know how, but I'm going to learn, and I want to learn how to do it. And, so maybe the times that I'm having too much of the dream time myself, it's spent in prayer because I woke up in prayer for certain people. I'm like, whoa, that's interesting. In my prayer time, in my sleep time, I'm in prayer. I'm in a meditation wow, that's cool. You know, all right. So my conscious and subconscious and my id and my spirit thing, is all kind of working together there all at one time, which I would have never conceived of in the before time. So over time, see, it's still related to the subject. Over time, I've been able, and I'm still developing whatever this is. But when I say that I'm saying prayers, all the time, I ain't joking, and I'm not doing this to like get y'all's permission, or I'm not telling you this as a ploy for anything or emotion. Nope, I'm stating this as this is my observation, and I'm just humbly relating it to you, because it continues to humble me in that, wow, even in my, my sinuses were bothering me, and I was sneezing and coughing, and my nose was running, and, you got that achy kind of feeling going on. And I was like, yeah, but the prayers can still go out no matter how I'm feeling. I can still feel my my subconscious sending prayers out. And I was like, wow, that's interesting, but anyway, just wanted to relay that. Prayer became a continual energy frequency emanating from me. I would agree with you in that. And it's just been, my observation, and I'm still observing it. You know what I mean? So, and I don't know what it means really. I just know that, wow, it's going on, and it is a continuous thing. And when I say it in my, three prayers at the end, that I'm honestly praying for everybody, I I can honestly say from my own observation that it's true, you know. without trying to make up a story or anything, because I'm not looking for sympathy or numbers or whatever. But I can say humbly, thank you, my dear friends up there, that it is happening, and I'm proud of that personally. Not looking for points, not looking for brownie points or any applause or nothing from like that from the peanut gallery. It is not my point, but from an observational point as a shaman in training, I'm like, oh wow, look at that. Ain't that interesting? I woke up doing prayers for someone. Whoa, wow. I mean, it just even in the dream state, I'm sending prayers out. There's a friend of mine, Christine, who gave me the animal cards that I use, right? And she's needed some prayers, and I woke up in the middle of doing prayers for Christine. I'm like, whoa, wow. Um, because I spoke with her husband, and I was like, anyway, there's a psychic connection between us. And so I was like, wow. So somehow in my dream state, she had asked me to send prayers, or she needed some prayers at that time. And I was happy to oblige. So it's just nice to know that even in an unconscious state, at least for me, I know that prayers are still going out where they're needed. And that's just an interesting point of view. And I'll check in with you later on that. Now, my butt hurts. I gotta pee. I'm out of liquids. And I gotta go check on the dog. So I love you all. Good morning. Thank you all for hanging out with me. Y'all, please be safe. And as I said, I continue to pray for all y'all and for other folks too. So keep up the good work. All right. Cheers, everybody. Please be safe. And we're coming up on ween time. So y'all be safe. Bye.